A Belgian and an American would make a gun that would shape the modern handgun and even influence his own gun, the model 1911, and make FN a household name. So FN, which stands for Fabrique Nationale, was founded by the top minds of gun design of the day, such as Larry Bird, John Browning, and much more, with the intent of getting military contracts for their weapons. So the Mauser, contracted 1889, was a success, and the names behind the FN brand were well known, and they did quality work, so the FN brand was now known worldwide for quality and quantity. But Nagant, the Nagant brothers specifically, and Frank Cott got back to their pursuits with their experimental and very revolutionary ideas. And also the Mauser and Luc Rigolo company were quite unhappy that they gave the blueprints and the contract copies to FN, and they got all the credit for it. And like anyone who gets all the credit for something and does all the work, they were very unhappy with that. So what they did some financial maneuvering and a sorts, so to make them dependent on the Belgian government for contracts for weapons, which limited their sales worldwide and even domestically in Europe. So it was a disappointment as well, because they had the best facilities in the world at the time, and the National Belgium Army didn't want to have competition. And the National Belgium Army didn't want competition, especially since Belgium was neutral, so they didn't really have an arms industry to begin with, and they kind of have a monopoly, so they didn't want any real competition. But people like Bird actually still wanted to work and see FN grow, but they needed something that would change the world, something that the world hadn't seen before, but they didn't have it. And at the time, like Nintendo and other companies of the sort, they went beyond their original scope and tried to make bicycles. This is where he runs into the man, the myth, the legend, John Browning. He was actually into pistols at this time. Sure, he made the trench gun and the lever action rifles such as the Winchester 1888 and many other things, but his main focus at that point in time, which is 1899, was pistols. And Colt bought up most of Browning's Colt pistols so they could have a monopoly on the designs, as well as keep other competitors forgetting Browning's designs, because Browning by this time was well known for work, quantity, and the best guns in the world. So Colt, which he was on at the time, basically bought up all of the guns except for one gun, which is a 32 ACP model military handgun, which was also made into a shorter model, which Colt actually passed on. So when Byrne and Browning actually met at the same place in Connecticut, it so happened that he had the model, the actual 1889, and the blueprints in his hand, and somehow they met up magically. So Bird kindly asked for the gun and the blueprints, and he was amazed. He went back to Belgium, and the Belgians were amazed as he returned, and they immediately started production on the 1889 right away. Not 1900 yet. So it was marketed as a handgun at first, but they also tried to dip their hands into the hand pistol trials of the time. So they tried the Belgian pistol trials and the British pistol trials. The stubborn British, of course, didn't like the chambering and the caliber, and they were still into their traditional revolver stage at this point. They did come out with the Webley Scott, but that was during World War One, and that was a Navy gun. But the Belgians, however, maybe because it was homegrown, maybe because it was a good design, they kind of took it a bit more seriously, and it was a bit more reliable and a bit smaller and a bit compact, unlike the Nagant revolver, which was good, but the FN 1899 was a bit better. It was a good revolver. The Nagant was reliable and it was good, but it was not as good or reliable as the model 1899. They actually liked it after a few reviews and started to order their neutral peacetime supplies, because Belgium is a neutral nation, so they can't really stockpile weapons in that sort of way. So they have a strict limit on weapons. For a while, they didn't merge the 1899 into the 1900, which is the more popular version, which was actually the same gun, but 1904 they did stop it altogether and basically converged all the 1899s into 1900s. And it was also issued to the usual suspects such as rear guard, police, national guard, cavalry, and of course artillerymen, NCOs, machine gun crews, the gendarmes, which are basically military police for the Flemish, well, not Walloon side, of the nation. So when World War One was official, this was the official sidearm of the Belgium, especially for the troops such as the MG crews, the NCOs and officers, even pilots in the early days of flight, and several other units, even to the end of the conflict, even making its way to Africa. Of course, it was probably the infamous gun that also started World War One in the first place, when Gabriel Princip shot the Archduke. I believe it's either a 1900 or a 1903 Hammerless, but I'm pretty sure it's a 1900 because it is an all-black picture and it's an all-black gun. So I got my money on the 1900, but it could be something else. But it's either that or the 1903, which is a slight improvement. Well, the legacy of this gun, it isn't really a C96 or a Luger, even a Webley, but it did have a pop culture icon to it, and it did not only birth FN again, but it also birthed the modern handgun, but the pistol and free carry market as well, not only in America but in Europe until they had strict gun laws. And even up to this day, you can still find one of these pistols or even a shotgun in a home, of course. Ottai's words, not mine, of course. And it was also the gun that brought FN back on the map and out of Luger's grip and back into independence and the worldwide exporting company that we all know and love for the most iconic guns, not only for home but for the UN as well when that time comes around. So a friendship is born, a market explodes, Belgium is properly armed, the FN1900, the FAL, 1903 Hammerless, P90 and the 5.7s, and many more breakthroughs that would keep them in the firearms track. But I do wonder if I could buy a FN bicycle, catchy name as well, FN bicycles.